Chief Scientist Du-hyun stood at the main window of the stellar dawn, his eyes fixed on the white sphere ahead. Earth was completely covered in ice, shining like a pearl in the darkness of space. He had studied many frozen worlds before, but this one was different. This planet once had life. "Chief, we're picking up some strange readings," Research Officer Jae-yun called from her monitoring station. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing control panel. "The ice sheet shows unusual patterns. I've never seen anything like this." Do-hyun walked over to her station, his long silver uniform reflecting the blue light from the screens. The data patterns were indeed unusual. Most frozen worlds showed random ice formations, but these looked almost planned. "Run a deep scan," he ordered, his voice calm but filled with curiosity. "Focus on the areas where the patterns are strongest." The ship's powerful sensors began their work. The crew waited in silence. They had visited Earth because it was next on their list of frozen worlds to study and possibly thaw for colonization. Their species had perfected the art of bringing frozen planets back to life, but they had never tried it with a world that once had its own civilization. "Sir," Jae-yun's voice rose with excitement. "You need to see this. We're detecting heat signatures deep under the ice. And electromagnetic signals." Do-hyun leaned closer to the screen. The readings were clear. Something was alive down there. Not just simple bacteria or basic life forms, but something generating power and using technology. "Impossible," whispered senior researcher Kang Dae from behind them. "The records say this world froze over 10,000 years ago. Nothing could have survived that long." Do-hyun straightened up and looked back at the white planet. "Send probes to the surface," he commanded. "Target the areas with the strongest signals, and prepare the thawing equipment. We might need it sooner than we thought." The probes launched from the stellar dawn like silver arrows, streaking toward Earth's frozen surface. As they descended, their sensors gathered more data. The signals were getting stronger. They weren't random. They formed clear patterns of communication. "Chief," Jae-yun called out again. "The probes have detected large caverns under the ice. They're artificial, perfectly carved and reinforced. And there's more." She paused, double-checking her readings. "We're picking up movement. Lots of movement." The entire bridge crew gathered around the main screen as the probe data came in. The caverns weren't just holes in the ice. They were entire cities. Vast networks of tunnels connected them, stretching across continents. Heat signatures suggested millions of life forms moving through these underground passages. "Send a communication signal," Do-hyun ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. All frequencies." Minutes passed as they waited. The crew held their breath. Then suddenly, the main screen lit up with a response. The message was in an ancient Earth language their computers quickly translated. "This is Commander Hansol of the Human Emergency Command Center. We've been expecting someone to find us eventually. Welcome to Earth. Please proceed with caution. The surface ice is unstable in several regions. We can guide you to a safe landing zone." Do-hyun looked at his stunned crew. What they had thought would be a simple terraforming mission had just become the greatest discovery in their species' history. Humanity hadn't died in the Great Freeze. They had adapted. They had survived. "Prepare for contact," Do-hyun announced to his crew, "and update Central Command. Tell them." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell them Earth is not dead. And its people are far more remarkable than anyone could have imagined." As the stellar dawn moved into position above the designated landing zone, Do-hyun couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this frozen world held. They had come to thaw a dead planet, but instead, they had found something extraordinary, a civilization that had refused to die, hidden beneath the ice for 10,000 years. The real discovery was just beginning. The landing bay opened slowly, revealing a massive underground chamber carved from ice and steel. The stellar dawn's landing crew stared in amazement at the engineering before them. Bright lights lined the walls, and heated air circulated through complex ventilation systems. Commander Hansol waited at the bottom of the landing platform with his welcome team. They wore simple white uniforms with blue stripes, marking them as members of the Emergency Command Center. Behind them stood rows of security personnel, their faces showing both curiosity and caution. Do-hyun led his team down the ship's ramp. Research Officer Jae-young walked beside him, carrying their scientific equipment. The gravity felt slightly stronger than what they were used to on their ship. Steam rose where their heated landing gear touched the floor. "Welcome to New Seoul Central," Hansol said, stepping forward. His voice was firm but friendly. "We've been monitoring your approach since you entered the solar system. I must admit, we expected first contact to happen differently." Do-hyun nodded respectfully. "We came here expecting to find a dead world. Instead, we found something remarkable. How did humanity survive the Great Freeze?" Hansol gestured toward a large doorway. "Please follow me. There's something you need to see." The group walked through wide corridors. The walls were a mix of reinforced ice and metal, with clear markings showing directions to different sectors. People stopped to watch them pass, their faces showing mixture of excitement and worry. They entered a massive control room. Screens covered the walls, showing different parts of the underground network. Maps displayed hundreds of connected cities spanning across continents. Temperature readings, power levels, and population data scrolled across monitors. When the Ice Age began, Hansol explained, our ancestors had already prepared. They had built the first underground shelters years before, sensing something was wrong with Earth's climate. When the freeze came, millions survived by going underground. Jae-young studied the displays with growing amazement. "These energy readings, you're using geothermal power?" "Yes," a new voice answered. A woman in a scientific uniform approached them. "I'm Chief Engineer Yun-ha. We tap into Earth's core heat. It powers everything. Our cities, farms, transportation systems. We've had 10,000 years to perfect the technology." Do-hyun watched as more data appeared on the screens. The underground network was far more complex than they had initially thought. "Your civilization didn't just survive," he said quietly. "It thrived." Hansol's expression grew serious. "We adapted. We had to. The surface became impossible to live on, but humanity refused to die. We built farms that don't need sunlight. We created new ways to purify water and air. We learned to live in harmony with our new environment. But now you're here to thaw the planet." Yun had added, looking directly at Do-hyun. "We've been preparing for this possibility. The question is, are we ready to return to the surface?" The room fell silent. Do-hyun looked at the screens again, seeing the vast civilization humanity had built beneath the ice. They had come to restore a planet. But now they realized the situation was far more complex. "The choice must be yours," Do-hyun said finally. "We have the technology to thaw the ice, but we won't proceed without your agreement. This is your world. You've proven you know how to survive here better than anyone." Hansol smiled slightly. "Then we have much to discuss. The Council of Cities will want to meet with you. They represent all the underground settlements. Some want to return to the surface. Others think we should stay below. It won't be an easy decision." As if to emphasize his words, a slight tremor shook the room. Everyone looked up instinctively, though miles of ice separated them from the surface. "That happens sometimes," Yun-ha explained. "The ice shifts. We've learned to live with it. But perhaps it's time for humanity to consider a new chapter in our story." Do-hyun nodded thoughtfully. The mission had become far more complex than a simple terraforming operation. They had found not just survivors, but a civilization that had transformed itself to thrive in what should have been impossible conditions. Whatever came next would change both their peoples forever. Min-ji walked through the vast archives of New Seoul, her footsteps echoing in the quiet space. As the city's youngest historian, she had spent years studying humanity's journey beneath the ice. Now, with aliens walking their halls, Her work had become more important than ever. She stopped at her favorite section, where the oldest records were kept. The soft blue lights reflected off the metallic shelves that held thousands of years of human history. She pulled out a data crystal and inserted it into her reader. The holographic display came to life, showing images from the early days of the underground cities. "Amazing, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Minji turned to see Do-hyun, the alien chief scientist, standing in the doorway. "Your council granted me permission to view your historical records." Minji nodded and gestured to the displays around them. "These tell the story of how we survived. Would you like me to show you?" The historian touched her reader, and the air filled with images. They showed the first underground shelters, built when scientists realized Earth was heading toward a devastating ice age. The pictures changed to reveal massive drilling machines cutting through rock, creating the first city spaces. "Our ancestors had only a few years to prepare," Minji explained, her voice filled with pride. "They built the first levels of New Seoul while the surface was still habitable. When the freeze came, we were ready." The images shifted again, showing vast indoor farms lit by artificial lights. "This was our biggest challenge," she continued, "growing food without sunlight. We developed special plants that could thrive in artificial conditions. Now our farms feed millions." Do-hyun watched with growing interest as more images appeared. They showed the construction of the magnetic transit system that connected the underground cities. Trains moved through tunnels at incredible speeds, letting people travel between settlements in hours instead of weeks. "But this is what saved us," Minji said, bringing up new displays. They showed the geothermal power stations, massive machines reaching down toward Earth's core. Without the planet's heat, none of this would be possible. It powers everything. Our homes, our farms, our transport systems. She paused at an image showing children in a schoolroom. "We never forgot the surface. Every child learns about the world above. We keep the old knowledge alive. About the sun, the seasons, the wind, even though most of us have never seen these things." Do-hyun studied the images carefully. "Your people did more than survive. You created a whole new way of life." Minji smiled and brought up more recent images. They showed modern New Seoul with its tall buildings reaching up to the ice ceiling, its parks filled with specially bred plants, and its streets busy with people going about their daily lives. "We adapted, but we're still human," she said. "We still celebrate the old holidays, even if we can't see the moon or the changing seasons. We still tell stories about the surface world, even if we've never felt rain or seen stars." A small tremor shook the archives, making the holographic images flicker. It was a common occurrence. The ice above them was always moving, always changing. "That's why some of us want to stay here," Minji explained, steadying herself. "This is our home now. We understand it. We know how to live here. The surface is unknown to us." She looked at the final image, showing the vast network of underground cities spanning the globe. "But others dream of returning to the surface. They say it's our destiny to reclaim the world above. That's why your arrival has caused such debate." Do-hyun nodded thoughtfully. "And what do you think, as a historian?" Minji touched her reader, closing the displays. The archives returned to their quiet blue glow. "I think that whatever we choose, it will be the next great chapter in human history, and I'll be here to record it." The council chamber of New Seoul stretched in a perfect circle, its walls showing moving images of all the underground cities. Chairwoman Yoo Jin sat at the center table, watching as the alien delegation entered. Do-hyun and his team looked around with wonder at the grand room, carved from polished ice and metal. "Welcome to the Council of Cities," Yoo Jin said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Today marks a historic moment for both our peoples." Representatives from 20 major underground cities sat around the circular chamber. Some had traveled for days through the magnetic transit system to attend this meeting. Their faces showed a mix of hope and worry. Do-hyun stepped forward and activated a small device. A hologram appeared, showing their ship's scans of Earth's surface. "We have studied your world carefully," he explained. "The ice can be thawed safely, but it will take time. We want to help, but only if that is what humanity wishes." Jin nodded and turned to the council members. "We must decide our future. For 10,000 years, we have lived beneath the ice. Now we have a choice to make." The representative from New Beijing stood first. "The surface is our birthright," he said firmly. "We have preserved all our knowledge of the world above. Our children deserve to see the sun. But the underground is our home now," argued the representative from New Delhi. "We have built something remarkable here. Why should we abandon it? Our civilization thrives in these cities." Do Hyun listened carefully as more council members spoke. Some wanted to return to the surface immediately. Others wished to stay below. A few suggested doing both, keeping the underground cities while slowly building new settlements above. "There is something else you should know," Ji-Yun said, stepping forward. She displayed new data on the chamber's screens. "Your geothermal power network is unique. We have never seen anything like it on other worlds. The technology you've developed could help many other civilizations." This caught everyone's attention. Jin leaned forward with interest. "You mean our solutions for survival could benefit others?" "Yes," Do Hyun confirmed. "Your methods of growing food without sunlight, your magnetic transit systems, your ice architecture, all of these could help colonies on other frozen worlds. You've done more than survive. You've created new ways of living." The chamber grew quiet as the council members considered this. Their isolation had ended, and now they had something valuable to offer the galaxy. "Perhaps," Jin said thoughtfully, "we don't have to choose between above and below. We could be a bridge between worlds. Keep our underground cities as centers of research and development, while gradually returning to the surface." The council members began to discuss this idea with growing excitement. But then a young council member from New Sydney raised his hand. "What about the ice itself?" he asked. "If we thaw the surface, what happens to all our ice cities? These structures have stood for thousands of years. They're part of our heritage." Do Hyun shared a concerned look with Ji-Yun. They hadn't considered the cultural value of the ice structures themselves. The thawing process would have to be more careful than they had planned. "We will need time," Jin announced, seeing the complexity of the situation. "Time to plan, time to prepare. Our people have waited 10,000 years. We can take a few more years to do this right." As the meeting continued, none of them noticed the slight tremor that shook the chamber. It was stronger than usual, but underground tremors were so common that everyone had learned to ignore them. No one realized this shake was different, a warning of problems to come. Taiwan moved carefully through the old archive section, deep below the main levels of New Seoul. The air here was colder, and the walls were rough-cut stone instead of polished metal. His light beam showed rows of ancient storage units, covered in decades of dust. As the youngest researcher in the Emergency Command Center, he had been tasked with studying old records to help plan the surface return. He stopped at a sealed container marked Project Winter Shield. The label was faded, but something about it caught his attention. It wasn't listed in the main database, which was unusual. All historical records were supposed to be cataloged. "You shouldn't be down here," a voice said. Taiwan turned to see Minji, the historian he had met earlier that week. She walked toward him, her footsteps echoing in the quiet space. "I found something strange," Taiwan explained, pointing to the container. "Help me open it." Together, they broke the old seal. Inside, they found data crystals and paper documents, carefully preserved. Minji picked up one of the oldest papers, her eyes widening as she read. "This can't be right," she whispered. "According to this, the Ice Age wasn't natural. Our ancestors, they caused it on purpose." Taiwan quickly connected one of the data crystals to his reader. The screen lit up with old videos and documents. They showed a world very different from the one in their history books. The surface was burning. The air was filled with poison. Wars had devastated much of the planet. They were desperate, Minji said, reading through more documents. Earth was dying, not from cold, but from heat and pollution. The wars had made everything worse. They had to do something drastic. The records revealed the truth. Earth's greatest scientists had worked together on Project Winter Shield. They had found a way to trigger a controlled ice age. It would freeze the surface, but it would also clean the air and water. The ice would protect Earth while humanity waited safely underground. We need to show this to the Council, Thaw said. But Minji grabbed his arm. Wait, she cautioned. Think about what this means. The aliens are here to thaw the ice, but the ice isn't just covering our world. It's healing it. At that moment, Do-hyun appeared at the entrance to the archive section. He had been looking for Minji to discuss more historical records. He saw their worried faces and the open container. What have you found? He asked quietly. Taiwan and Minji shared a look, then showed him the documents. Do-hyun read them carefully, his expression growing more serious with each page. This changes everything, he said finally. If we thaw the ice too quickly, we might undo 10,000 years of healing. The surface might not be ready yet. Suddenly, a strong tremor shook the archive. Dust fell from the ceiling, and several containers crashed to the floor. This shake was much stronger than usual. Something's wrong, Minji said, steadying herself against a wall. These tremors are getting worse. Taiwan checked his reader, which showed data from the city's sensor network. The ice. It's already starting to change. The alien ships in orbit, their presence is affecting the temperature balance. We need to warn everyone. Do-hyun touched his communication device. I'll tell my ship to pull back, but we might be too late. The process may have already started. As they hurried out of the archives, Taiwan clutched the precious documents. They had found the truth about Earth's ice age, but now they faced a new problem. The very thing that had saved humanity might be starting to fall apart. Engineer Sungmin stared at the readings on his screen with growing concern. The tremors were getting worse, and now he understood why. The alien ship's presence in orbit had started a chain reaction in Earth's carefully balanced ice sheet. The heat from your ships is interacting with our geothermal network, he explained to Do-hyun and Jae-yun in the main control room. It's creating pressure points where the ice is melting too quickly. Commander Hansol leaned over the display, his face reflecting the red warning lights. How bad is it? Sungmin brought up a three-dimensional map of the underground city network. Red dots showed where the ice was becoming unstable. If we don't do something soon, entire sections of the city could collapse. Do-hyun quickly contacted his ship. All vessels must move to a higher orbit immediately, he ordered. But Sungmin shook his head. It's too late for that, the engineer said. The process has already started. The ice sheet's temperature balance is disrupted. We need to act now to save the cities. Chairwoman Yoojin arrived with Minji and Taiwan, who had just shared their discovery about Project Winter Shield with the Council. Our ancestors built fail-safes into the system, Yoojin said. There must be something in the old records. Minji quickly searched through the recovered documents. Here, she said, pointing to a technical diagram. They installed emergency cooling systems throughout the network, but they haven't been used in thousands of years. Sungmin studied the old plans. These systems were designed to protect the cities if the ice ever became unstable. We can use them to counter the heat buildup, but we'll need help. He turned to Do-hyun. Your ships have advanced temperature control technology. If we combine it with our cooling systems, we might be able to stabilize the ice sheet. Do-hyun nodded. We'll need to coordinate perfectly. One mistake could make things worse. The group worked quickly, connecting the alien technology to the ancient human cooling systems. Sungmin's fingers flew across his control panel, redirecting power to the emergency systems. Jae-yun used her ship's computers to calculate exactly where they needed to apply the cooling effect. Another violent tremor shook the control room. Warning sirens began to sound throughout the city. "We're losing connection with New Paris," an operator called out. "Their main tunnel is showing signs of stress." "Temperature spikes detected near New Cairo," another voice reported. "Their farm levels are at risk." Some men took a deep breath. "Activating emergency cooling now," he announced. The ancient machinery rumbled to life, sending waves of supercooled air through the tunnel network. Do-hyun coordinated with his ships. They positioned themselves carefully, using their technology to create a protective field around the most vulnerable areas. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to change. The tremors continued. Warning lights kept flashing. Then, slowly, the temperature readings began to stabilize. "It's working," some men said, relief clear in his voice. "The pressure is decreasing. The ice sheet is starting to stabilize." But their success came with a price. The emergency cooling had used enormous amounts of power. Several farming sectors had lost power completely, and some of the outer tunnels had been damaged beyond repair. "We've saved the main cities," Commander Hansel said, looking at the damage reports. "But this crisis has shown us something important. We can't stay underground forever. The ice age that saved us could also destroy us." Chairwoman Eugene nodded gravely. "Then we need to plan our return to the surface carefully. Not too fast, not too slow. We'll need both human and alien technology to succeed." As the crisis teams worked to restore power and check for damage, everyone in the control room understood that everything had changed. The time for debate was over. Humanity's journey back to the surface would have to begin soon, ready or not. Director Jinwoo stood in the newly constructed airlock chamber, checking his protective suit one final time. After the recent crisis, the Council had appointed him to lead the surface reclamation project. Now he would be among the first humans to step onto the surface in 10,000 years. "All readings are stable," Engineer Sung Min reported through the communication system. "The alien atmospheric processors have created a safe zone 5 kilometers wide around the emergence point." Do-hyun and his team had worked for weeks to prepare this area. Their ships had carefully melted a section of ice, then used their technology to stabilize the temperature and clean the air. It would be the first piece of Earth's surface to see sunlight in millennia. "Remember," Jae-hyun's voice came through the system, "your eyes will need time to adjust. The surface is very bright, even with the protective shields we've put in place." Jinwoo looked at his team. 20 people had been chosen for this first emergence. They were a mix of scientists, engineers, and builders who would begin constructing humanity's first surface settlement. "Opening outer doors in 10 seconds, Sung Min announced. The team stood ready, their hearts beating fast with excitement and fear. The massive doors slowly opened upward. Bright light flooded in, making everyone squint despite their protective visors. Jinwoo took a deep breath and stepped forward. His boot touched the ground. Not ice or metal, but actual soil. "We have successful emergence," he reported, his voice full of emotion. "The ground is stable. The air processing systems are working perfectly." The rest of the team followed him out. They stood in a large cleared area surrounded by walls of ice that stretched up into the sky. Above them, alien ships maintained the protective field that kept the temperature stable. But most amazing of all was what they saw when they looked up. "The sun," someone whispered. Even through the protective field and their visors, it was the brightest thing any of them had ever seen. Many of them had only known artificial light their entire lives. The team began their work, setting up monitoring equipment and taking samples of the soil. The aliens had helped them design special buildings that could withstand the changing conditions as more of the surface thawed. "Director," one of the scientists called out. "You need to see this." She pointed to a small green shoot pushing through the soil. A plant was already growing in the newly exposed earth. Jinwoo carefully knelt down to examine it. "Life is returning faster than we expected," he said into his communicator. "The soil must have preserved seeds all this time, waiting for the right conditions." In the command center below, Minji watched through the team's cameras. She was documenting everything for future generations. Our ancestors froze the earth to save it, she said to Thaw, who stood beside her. And now we're seeing proof that their plan worked. The earth didn't just survive, it's ready to live again. But not everything was proceeding smoothly. Some of the surface team members were showing signs of discomfort. Their bodies, adapted to underground life for thousands of generations, were struggling with the different gravity and pressure on the surface. We're seeing some physiological stress in the team, the medical officer reported. Nothing dangerous, but we'll need to study these effects carefully. Our bodies have changed more than we realized. Jin Woo nodded, making notes. This was just the beginning of their challenges. They would need to learn how to live on the surface all over again, adapting just as their ancestors had adapted to life underground. As the first day on the surface drew to a close, the team prepared to return underground. They had taken their first steps, but the journey was just beginning. Humanity would need to find a balance between their old home beneath the ice and their new life under the sun. 1 year after the first emergence, the surface settlement had grown into a small city. Council leader Yu Jin stood at the window of the new government building, watching workers construct homes under the warm sunlight. The protective shields were no longer needed here. This part of Earth's surface had stabilized. The adaptation programs are working well, Chief Medical Officer Hee Young reported, standing beside her. The latest group of surface residents is showing much less physical stress. The treatments you developed with the alien medical team have been very effective. Yu Jin nodded, pleased with the progress. Below them, children played in a park where real grass now grew. These young ones would be the first generation in 10,000 years to grow up under open sky. Do Hyun entered the room, followed by Commander Hansol. The alien scientist had chosen to stay on Earth as the official representative of his people. The Galactic Council has reviewed our latest reports, he announced. They are impressed by humanity's approach to returning to the surface. Slow and steady, Hansol said with a smile. Just as our ancestors planned it. He handed Yu Jin a tablet showing the latest statistics. Over 10,000 people now lived on the surface full-time. Many more came up from the underground cities each day to work and study. The underground cities remained vital centers of civilization. New Seoul had become a famous research center, where scientists from across the galaxy came to study the technology humans had developed. The magnetic transit system now connected surface settlements to the underground network, creating one unified civilization. Director Jin Woo's team made another interesting discovery, Hee Young said, bringing up new images on the main screen. They showed strange patterns in human DNA. Living underground changed us more than we knew. We can see in the dark better than our ancestors. Our bodies process oxygen more efficiently. We're stronger in different ways. Evolution never stops, Do Hyun observed. You adapted to survive, just as the Earth itself adapted during its long winter. A soft chime sounded, reminding them it was time for the ceremony. Today marked the official recognition of Earth as a full member of the galactic community. Representatives from 100 alien worlds had come to witness the event. They took the elevator down to the Grand Plaza where the ceremony would be held. The plaza was designed to showcase both aspects of human civilization. One half lay under the open sky, while the other extended into the underground city, a perfect balance of humanity's past and future. Yu Jin stepped up to the speaker's platform. Below her, humans and aliens gathered together. Some wore surface protection suits, others were dressed in the traditional clothing of the underground cities. All were here to witness history. 10,000 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the plaza. Our ancestors made a difficult choice. They froze our world to save it. They built new homes beneath the ice and found new ways to survive. Today, we honor their wisdom. She gestured to the underground entrance. We will not abandon the civilization we built below. Our cities beneath the ice are part of who we are now. They stand as monuments to human determination and creativity. Then she turned to the open sky, but we also embrace our return to the surface and our new place among the stars. Earth is no longer the frozen world that our friends from space discovered. It is something more. A planet where humanity learned to live in harmony with nature's changes, below the ice and above it. The audience applauded as Yu-jin accepted Earth's formal membership in the galactic community. Do-hyun stepped forward to present her with the official recognition, but paused to add his own words. "We came here expecting to find a dead world that needed saving," he said. "Instead, we found that humanity had not only survived, but had created something remarkable. You have taught us that adaptation is not just about survival. It is about finding new ways to thrive." As the ceremony concluded, the sun began to set, creating a beautiful display of colors in the sky. Underground, the eternal lights of New Seoul glowed steadily, two parts of one civilization, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.